when humans are in this state, it allows their mind to really harness thought energy,
Mm.
because thought energy is very powerful. And this is one of my strong. Uh, you asked me earlier, like something about what I think is important to share. I think if people understood that their thoughts and their words have a lot of energy behind them, and the stronger you can focus your own personal energy and then line it with the earth and the rest of the universe in which we live, the stronger your thoughts are going to be.
A spiritual chief, roadman, and human rights activist, Kuauhtli has dedicated his life to sharing and preserving native tradition. For over 25 years, he has been conducting ceremonies through song, dance, and sacred plants. I had the chance just to sit down and share space with Kuauhtli Vasquez, and throughout the conversation, we shared so many personal stories and touched on a variety of issues such as ecology, ancient history, spirituality, healing, addiction, and just so many other topics. And well, we had a few technical issues throughout the conversation, but we still managed to have a really enjoyable and relaxed conversation. So honestly, I was just grateful to have him on the cast, and I hope everyone just enjoys the conversation. Well, first off, just thanks for having this conversation. Like I said, I've been following your work, and it's very inspiring for me as well, just to see just an elder go through that journey and just well, before we start, do you want to say anything? Do you have any intentions or again,
Well,
the floor is yours. So
okay. Well, I always my standard introduction is just ask permission from the Great Spirit, Creator Spirit, just for some good thoughts and good words to share. Because in our culture, sometimes people ask me, "Well, do you call what do you call yourself? Like, what do they call the shamans or something like this?"
right, right.
And in our culture, I tell them we just call them people who share. Temastiani. It means someone who has something to share. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for
I'll be
sure.
happy to share experience or things like this.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I definitely have a lot of questions as well, and um, I'm definitely what I'm feeling right now. I kind of have a feeling of where it's gonna go, and I do actually did prepare some questions because yeah, I was going through all your stuff, man, and it's like it's really beautiful stuff, and I think well, let's just see where it goes. But I guess like anything, just to start off, how did you get to where you are? Like, why this path?
Well, it was always in my, um, I can say, since I was young, I could say that I can remember that I always had like this inclination for justice,
Hmm.
like like fairness, equality, or some form of parity among people, like um, and I always had like this disdain for like people that were like bullies or trying to take advantage of other people, like this always kind of struck me as something that there must be a way to eliminate these kind of things, and so even as a child, I was always kind of aware of these things that were going on. And then as a teenager, I started getting involved in, I guess you could call them political movements,
Hmm.
but they were more like labor movements, justice movements. Like my family worked in the agricultural uh, industry as laborers.
Hmm.
And there was a man named Cesar Chavez in the 60s who was organizing workers in this industry and making them aware of the contamination of pesticides and the fact that we used to work from sun up to sundown. He was like, well, you guys have rights. You don't have to work so long.
Wow.
And you shouldn't have to, be exposed to these chemicals. And, my mother developed disorders, mental disorders like epilepsy, things like this from these
Mm,
pesticides. And so, yeah, it kind of hit home. So then I was like, yeah, we should do something. And so he organized these committees and boycotts of like lettuce and grapes, and really created a lot of awareness back then. Even people didn't understand this word environment
mm,
or ecology, things like this. These were like, what do you mean? We're just going to keep ravishing the earth? And it just didn't make sense because my family's also instilled indigenous uh, philosophy and principles since I was young. Like even when we were working in the fields, if we saw a corn plant, my father would say, "Don't cut that plant. That's a sacred plant." And I said, "What do you mean that sacred plant?" Yeah,
mm.
that's corn. That's what our
Right.
civilizations were built on.
For sure. Yeah.
So like this, so at an early age, I was aware of many of these things. And my grandmother too, she was always take us to the lady that knew how to heal things. She was like
Mm,
the curandera. She
yeah.
used eggs and smoke and feathers and stuff and cured my little sister. So I was exposed to this, since I was young.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, for sure. And I get what you mean because with modern civilization, it's definitely a viewpoint. It's kind of separates you from nature, and you grow up feeling that it's nature is something to be conquered, it's something to be owned, and yeah, ecology is something I think now. Well, from the movements that I've been a part of, there's definitely a movement towards more ecology, more environmentalism, and but I feel like in your time it must have been just a lot of pioneering work, if I'm guessing, right? Just
Well, it was creating awareness, like,
right.
okay, where I live, the Midland location for the Dow Chemical plant, which was the main location for Dow Chemical. And Dow Chemical had been
Mm,
contracted by the United States government to produce um, chemicals that were going to be used against the Germans, basically you spray them on it and it attacks your nervous system. You can't function.
mm,
And they didn't have an opportunity to use um, these nerve chemicals on the Germans. But what they noticed is that wherever it fell on the ground, like the roaches and the ants would die.
right.
So then, Dow Chemical had all of this stuff, and they were like, "Well, how can we make money off of this?" So they convinced the farmers, the agricultural industry, to spray it on the food
Mm,
to kill the insects.
yeah.
Being full aware, they were fully aware of the effects that it was going to have on people. But the people, like, they didn't care. They were like, we were like, this stuff's going to get in your water, and they're like, it'll, it's just going to soak in there and it'll go away. Like they had like
Right, right.
nobody was really aware of the disastrous effects that industry was having on the earth.
Mm,
Like the just take the car pollution, or like the factories. In the automobile industry, they were just like, they had these huge smokestacks to where I lived, and this black smoke was coming out day and night, 24 hours a day,
mm.
to make the engines. And like your house, your car, your clothes, everything had this black metal dust on it. And we were breathing that stuff.
Oh
you
man. Oh man, yeah.
and people they just weren't aware of it. People started getting emphysema and all these diseases, but they didn't put two to two together. So eventually, the first part of it was just educating people. And it's sad now because with so much information available. Yeah, with now with the amount of information that there is now. I mean, okay, I'm not that old, but when I was a kid, there were no televisions.
Right.
So now with, with the advent of the internet, et cetera, there's so much information, but the governments are purposely confusing people and creating all this false information, movies, everything. It's the big campaign just to keep people in the dark about what's actually happening. And that's the unfortunate part, is that, even when you hear the truth, you don't even know whether to believe it or not.
Yeah, I totally get you. It's there's so much propaganda with GMOs. Um, Even with all the information about the toxicity levels of pesticides, herbicides, and all these things, there's really propaganda from big corporations, and they still. It doesn't matter. Sometimes you can't reach certain people because they're so invested and plugged in into this scientific way of um, producing food, which makes no sense because we've
Mhm.
made food for how many years naturally, and we've just had, and there's so many people out there that have amazing farming methods that are just much better than monocropping methods, and we really don't need pesticides and herbicides, but
At
um,
all. Yeah.
yeah, and it's this crazy death cycle, right? It's people don't understand like the value of soil and ecology. It's if you have sick soil with toxins, you have sick plants. Who's eating the plants, right?
Exactly.
Us animals. So if the animals get sick, we're eating the plants and animals, and we get sick, and then it's just this constant cycle of, okay, you get all this toxicity in your system from the food. There's no nutrition because the soil's deficient. There's no you know, and like on a deeper level, the energy of the soil is not natural anymore. The essence of the food isn't there, and then when you're eating it, you're just like a dead person. And then it's
Exactly.
it's it's crazy how you're taking sick food, genetically modified food that's pretty much dead, and then you process that dead stuff into more dead stuff, and you think it's supposed to like heal you, and then they're like, okay, well, you think it's gonna cause disharmonies in your energy body, or in a more medical term, you're gonna get toxicity in your body, and then you have to take, as you know, um, uh, as a healer or as someone who's helping people, they don't even believe in like natural medicine or natural healing. They just go to the pharmacist, right? And then they go to a psychologist who's treating them with more drugs. It's crazy. It's just upside down.
Yeah.
Like I don't get it.
Yeah.
But but
Well,
I just
well,
wanted to share
there
that
is,
because I know what you
yeah.
mean. I know what you mean. That's all.
You absolutely hit the most crucial aspect of the modern madness.
Mm,
And this is what Cesar Chavez was saying in 1965 and 1960, back then when I was getting involved, is that they're going to take the seeds, they're going to modify the food, and whoever controls the food production is going to have control over the people.
right.
And basically, this is what their plan has been.
Mm,
It's there's a lot of aspects that are like totally wrong. Another one, okay, you have the food production. Another one, for example, you could look at the military
right.
and the policing. The level of fascism. The largest employer in the world is the U.S. military,
Mm,
and they take like 70% of the United States budget, which is the biggest budget in the world, and use it for military.
mm,
It's actually a detriment to the whole world, because what are they going to do with all of these weapons, with all these soldiers, with all these, people that are trained to kill, weapons that are, they're going to wreak havoc on the earth. That's what they're going to do.
yeah, for sure.
And, and this is the thing, this is a critical, this is a critical situation, because you put somebody like Trump, who's a little, can't even really express himself intelligently, and he's very prone to spontaneity, decisions, and I don't really think he has a grasp of world politics. And you put somebody like that, and the generals could probably manipulate him, and they could probably start using all of these weapons to, start wars. And this is what the earth doesn't need now, because along
Mm.
with the food production that's destroying the earth, to support a military of that size, you need petrochemicals, you need, lithium, you need all of these, copper, steel, iron. So they're just creating wars just to go get all of these materials from developing countries who can't defend themselves, like
Mm.
Bolivia, or some countries in Africa and Asia that don't have these war defenses.
Right.
And so this, now there's a total unbalance in the world. Like, you take the military budgets of Russia, China, the UK, France, and five other more countries. You combine all of their military budgets, and it still doesn't equal the United States military budget.
Wow.
And it's totally out of proportion. You see, in the United States, the mentality there is that we need this. I wanted to continue along that thought, because I think people could appreciate what's happening in the world
Mm.
if they understand the history of the United States Army, how it was developed to basically commit genocide in order to establish the United States. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the army was created for the specific purpose of removing humans
Mm.
and for controlling a certain land area. So now, as the United States Army has graduated to a global presence, they realize that with modern technology, all their soldiers could from one day to the other contract a virus that could render them pretty much incapable.
Mm.
So with their artificial intelligence and their robotics, they're creating like a new force on the planet,
Right.
and they're reducing the will of the people by having all the people in the world do certain things. Like, you're going to have to get a vaccination if you want to travel.
Mm.
As it is, we have to use a passport. I had a native friend. He was the chief of the Hopis, and
Mm.
he refused to carry a passport.
Oh, wow.
And he was traveling around the world. He was a representative of a non-governmental organization in the United Nations,
Mm.
and he was a famous guy. And when he would go through the borders, he would just have an eagle feather and a piece of leather with a red cloth.
Mm.
And he goes, "This is my passport," because we don't adhere to any government.
Right. So,
We're
well,
free.
I know what you mean. Like, so was he able to go through, or what? How does that? Or
Yeah,
just?
yeah, he was able to go through, because
Oh, wow.
in reality, we're just buying into this whole idea that we need a passport, that we need
Yeah,
to
for
have
sure.
something. So now they're going to put more stricter requirements,
Mm.
and this is part of the reason, is because the people will eventually be so interconnected that they don't want to be ruled by physical force.
Right. Right.
So a lot of this military budget is being directed to programs to control the minds of the people.
Mm. And we're getting deep here. We're getting into deep waters. But I totally know where you're coming from. And yeah, with artificial intelligence, and I've had a lot of these conversations too. It's as if we're well, this they're so obsessed with the material world and computation, right? They're really obsessed with this algorithms and trying to compute the reality and trying to they're really obsessed with that type of framework, and it sucks the soul out of human beings. It makes them
Exactly. Yeah.
reliant on the it's a materialist perspective, and it kind of it shrinks your perception, right? To
Yeah, it makes you less sensitive to the fact that we exist on multiple realities.
right, right.
We exist at molecular levels, at organ levels, like Your heart has intelligence. Each of your organs has a function and an intelligence. And it's
Mm,
all the organs and the systems, the nervous system and the brain is one part, and it all comes together to make a human experience.
mm,
But this doesn't negate the fact that we're part of a planet, and and the planet has a consciousness,
mm.
and that consciousness isn't it's connected with the solar system.
Right.
Its magnetic force, its life is part of the solar system, and the solar system is connected to a star system.
Mm,
And all of these are greater forces that the ancients, the true civilizations, the people that organized themselves in a way to develop technology, to grow food, and to harness the natural forces without polluting the earth.
right. Right.
And these people were able to do that because they would go into other dimensions,
Mm,
because they weren't stuck in this physical reality. And if you think this is the only reality, then this enables people to dominate you.
right.
And this is what they're doing. They're forcing them into a more narrow reality.
Mm,
And plants, such as ayahuasca and peyote and these things, totally break down this matrix.
right.
They give you this perception that you're talking about.
Mm,
They increase your senses. You know, I notice you're wearing glasses. Not to. I hope you don't take it personal, but I used to wear glasses, and I started eating a lot of peyote, and then at some point my eyesight improved, and I go to the doctor, and they tell me I have 20/20 vision now.
You know what? I actually was watching your videos, and I was like, that was amazing. That was like I hope hopefully when I have time I'll be able to enter into those spaces again and really take my time to just heal up and do that. And but I did notice that in your other interviews with the peyote. I was really listening. Yeah.
Yeah, these plants, they work at the molecular level,
Right.
and like when you think about what they call the pyramids
Mm,
in Egypt, for lack of a better word, because it's such a narrow understanding of what it is. It makes it sound like the triangle. You know that triangle over there.
yeah, I
Like
know.
so, the way they told me in high school that that was constructed was by using slaves,
Yeah.
and this story is still taught as history of humanity. When I visited the Egyptian pyramid,
Mm,
I ate some peyote just to heighten my awareness
mm,
and to see the level of technology, the result of this technology, drills, saws, what my own mind up to this point devised would be like some tool that's harnessing the energy of the sun and
mm,
working through and some type of laser or light guided tool is actually severing the molecules of the stones, because it is so precise that it's just like if they took a laser and cut it. These
mm,
big 4 ton to 40-ton stones.
right.
And this kind of technology exists because people say that all that has transpired is real in some dimension.
Hmm.
So there was a man named Quetzalcoatl
Right.
in our culture. And what he had as one of his abilities was to be in perfect harmony between this reality and other realities. In other words, he could function in other realities. So he went and brought back technology. Like, for example, he brought back corn
Mm,
for the continent of the native people
mm,
of the what you call Americas and things like this. He was able to go and bring back these architecture structures to harness and communicate with other uh, intergalactical intelligence.
Right.
And this enabled the native people in Mexico and in different parts of Central America and the islands and other parts of the planet to function on the earth, understanding the earth's natural energetic life giving abilities and just putting the humans right in tune with that.
Mm.
And this is how they kept the water clean. This is how they kept the air clean. They had abundance of food. And when humans are in this state, it allows their mind to really harness thought energy.
Mm.
Because thought energy is very powerful. And this is one of my strong, uh, you asked me earlier, like something about what I think is important to share. I think if people understood that their thoughts and their words have a lot of energy behind them, and the stronger you can focus your own personal energy and then line it with the earth and the rest of the universe in which we live, the stronger your thoughts are going to be. And this is what the governments also understand. So they're trying to control your thoughts by showing you movies and showing you, all these distractions that keep you in a consumer mentality. They just keep you in this, obedient kind of, okay, we're saying you're going to do this, you're going to do that. Okay, why? Because you have no way of really using your brain to figure out another way to live.
Right. Right.
So that this is the modern slave,
Mm.
and in order to free yourself, you need to be able to have water, you need to have food, and you need to have a place where you can develop your society without using necessary human resource for anything other than developing the society, not for war, not for having to clean up pollution. You
Mm.
have to keep everything working in a very positive and collective way. So this is
Right.
what I think the native people were able to accomplish, and this man Quetzalcoatl brought a lot of this knowledge.
Mm.
And at some point, they said he was able to go to Venus,
Mm.
and there's certain things that he brought back from Venus, and he was able to um, use this power to molecularly alter plants. So he was like creating. This is why in Mexico you have like 100 kinds of beans, 200 kinds of tomatoes, 1,000 kinds of chilies,
Oh yeah.
because because they were able to naturally create hybrids,
Mm.
and in this way they could grow things in the desert, they could grow things in the mountains, they could grow things on in dry seasons, and so they were using technology to increase the quality of life of the people. And part of the way that they expanded their civilization was by creating large groups of people that were carrying seeds and irrigation technology and construction technology. And this was their so-called armies to go and, you know, uh, create larger populations working together. And a lot of this was revealed to me in ceremonies.
Mm.
When in a ceremony, when you have the fire and you have the water and you're opening, you're using the ancient languages, which I like to use.
Right.
the languages that were spoken in Atlantis and the ancient civilizations, you're using that same vibration and you start seeing it like a kind of in the form of a hologram
Mm.
because these dimensions do exist. And that's one thing I like about the medicines is that whereas chemicals they say can produce hallucinate, I say they make you hallucinate. In other words,
Hallucinate.
see
Yeah.
things, yeah, see things that aren't there.
Mm.
The plants enable you to see things that are there, but that you're unable to see because your vibration is stuck in this reality.
Mm.
And they free you up. They give you another perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, uh, what I wanted there was a lot there, and there's so much to say. Like especially with plants, you're right. It's as if they dissolve systems of interpretation, and then you're able to access different energy states or just different realms or different realities. Well, I do have a question. So I have a question though because um, you made like a difference between, let's say, artificial or chemicals versus the plants because just I'm learning from my teachers as well as learning from just teachers such as yourself. The way they look at some psychedelics they look at entheogens as something that's just a chemical, right? And for you, what's your stance on that? Because some people they just isolate a compound and they'll call it DMT. Whereas for me, it's like plants are alive. They're a spirit and they help guide you. Whereas a lot of these people who are entering, let's say, these circles, they just want to quantify everything into some type of molecule.
Well, you touched on it earlier when you talked about materialism versus whatever the opposite would be, whatever your word for it. Is it energetic, spirituality, uh,
Yeah.
interdimensional, or are you just stuck in the 3D materialistic world?
Right.
Because in the 3D materialistic world, a molecule will do,
Mm.
just a simple isolated molecule. But when you're dealing with the mysterious, live, energetic flow of the universe and all its manifestations,
Mm.
then, for example, peyote was analyzed by a German scientist 100 years ago, and he isolated mescaline
Right.
as an alkaloid that adheres to certain molecules that you have in your brain. And because it has an alkaloid, they kind of match like this, the way I like to explain it. And then it has like a supercharger that gives it like another power.
Mm.
He failed to mention that there's over 50 alkaloids in peyote.
Right. Right.
So what did the other 49 do, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing with like the scientific method. They have it's like a linear way of looking at something, and they always miss the essence of it. And well, I just wanted to say that because I'm also into just herbs just for wellness as well. And I'm just gonna segue just a bit, but I want to stay on this topic because I think it's really important. But when I was working with clients and we were working with let's say healing with foods and herbs, I just found every time you because right now when you look at like the marketplace, they're like, okay, you should eat like cacao because it's high in magnesium, right? You should eat X any type of food. They always say this is good for you because it's high in vitamin C and all of this stuff. And the way I look at it now is so different. And the way uh, like food to me is a compressed form. It's like an energy signature that you eat, right? It's a relationship between you and the food, and you have like maybe in Indian or Ayurveda it'd be your dosha, or in Chinese medicine your chi has to resonate with the food, right? And that's why they had different types of dietary regimens. But I just found every time I kind of walked away from the active ingredient approach, people got a lot better. It was just like they made it so overcomplicated, right? Because they're busy with their microscopes trying to find like the active ingredient, but it's light. It's not an actual like molecule. It's an illusion, right? It's not actually there. It's like they're trying to cast nets into the water, trying to catch the water. It's not. They're never gonna catch it. It's impossible. So, so, uh, and actually, just my last point. I'll let you have the floor because you're sharing so much wisdom here. I met a Chinese healer, and because how I was eating before was healthy, but it was this active ingredient type of style, right? And then he, when I met the healer, he was like, "Oh, whoa, your energy is imbalanced. You have to eat a certain way." And he just knew right away what my issues were. And he's like, "Okay, this is the herbs." So what he did was he cultivated the herbs, he dried them, and he I was he basically balanced a lot of my issues. And just the long short, he told me that I had like issues with just to keep it short. Basically, he said if I didn't like rebalance myself, I wouldn't be able to have children. And a year later, because I was following his advice, I ended up having a son. So it's amazing. So anyway, I just wanted to share that story where it's really a direct experience I've had, just meeting really wise people of the earth. And I consider myself a novice, so I'm here just learning from you and everyone else. But yeah, back to your point. Yeah, that's why I just truly in my heart, I there's a relationship that is with the plant. And anyway, I'll just give the floor back.
Yeah, well, I can speak about. I'm actually an expert on peyote
Right.
because I'm from out of town. So if you want to call it, you're in Canada, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
nobody from Calgary could be considered an expert on anything because they're from Calgary. But since I'm from another country, I can be considered an expert. That's one of the.
That's true.
Well, anyway, one thing I do know about peyote is that it affects the production of hormones
Mm,
through the alkaloids that it contains. And it has tremendous healing abilities, like really quick. And this is by observing the plant itself. When you cut the plant, it heals itself like
mm,
immediately. Like by the next day, it's already ready. You could put it back in the earth and it'll develop new roots. And this is like if you cut a cabbage or you cut a tree off its roots or even a flower, most plants are going to perish. But peyote has developed a way for its own survival and reproduction to heal itself immediately and the ability to form new roots wherever it's planted.
mm,
And just observing a plant like this is an indication of some of its effects that it could have on other organisms like humans.
mm,
So basically, what it does is it gets into the endocrine system. And like you were saying, okay, fertility, um, it helps with this. Um, Emotions, it helps with this to stabilize the hormones that you need.
mm,
Anxiety, it can diminish your anxiety. I know people that had anxiety attacks and they started eating peyote, I guess, and they use it just to keep themselves calm because it's just a hormone that's being produced that's making their brain work this way.
mm,
Same thing with depression. The hormones in the glands here, and this is just through observing people eating peyote for the last 50 years.
mm,
I can see that affect primarily good health, um, strong immunization against viruses, And so my friend, she did a master's on alkaloids.
Mm,
And when she was doing it, she did a lot of research and she shared a lot of it with me about the benefits of alkaloids to cure diseases like cancers and malfunctionings of cells. Basically, it's when cells are not doing what they're supposed to do.
mm,
So they affect your whole body. So they're like alkaloids are what helps cells heal. So you're healing your whole organism at the cellular level through molecules,
mm,
which are the foundation of the cells. So when you understand this reality, you're right. It's not just a chemical. It's a plant that comes from nature in the form that it's coming from nature is in perfect harmony to heal the ills that the humans have kind of developed somehow. They created these stress and
mm.
you know malnutrition and all this before they didn't have to worry about these things. But somehow these plants coming from nature can help cure people from diseases that they created. And that to me is an indication that there is a larger consciousness on the planet that says, look, these humans are messing up the planet. So the planet needs to have something to take care of itself in a simple form. And if you look at it, if you look at it as I can say a energetic flow. If you can understand everything's just energy flowing. The plants are aware that things are out of balance. And it doesn't take a whole lot to figure out that humans are the reason everything's going crazy on this planet.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And and I think just as if humans could realize, you can see things as a human and you observe them. And what makes human think that other parts of reality, like mountains, rivers, oceans, don't have an ability to alter creation?
Mm.
Because that's what we're doing. We're just changing the course of creation. We're supposed to be evolving, but sometimes I wonder, we're
Right.
devolving or something.
Yeah, totally. I totally, it's funny because I work in that field. Like the way I like to describe it is there's people like yourself, you're working, there's like a general consensus, right? So like there's that this general agreed upon reality that we're playing. And then I think the role that I'm playing right now, I'm on the fringe, I'm like a bridge builder. So I'm always have to like, I'll meet like guys like you or different people who are assisting and working maybe 2 or 3 standard deviations from the general consensus, right? And then when I can see it, like when I come back and because I do a lot of holistic wellness counseling, and I've done a lot of counseling with cancer patients and all those things. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's like you're saying, it's very simple, but they want to make it complicated. Like they just have to make it so complicated. And sometimes the compliancy rates are are low. um I guess where my heart is in terms of trying to make a difference is helping to be a bridge and helping people with integration. So lately what I've been doing for the past 5 years was helping people, let's just say people in the matrix, right? um I'll help them, find people who can, let's say, help them dissolve systems of interpretation or break their perception, right? But I also help other people, and it's not me per se. I'm just working with spirits and whatever. I just work with spirit, right? And then people who are kind of they're way out there, they just can't adjust back into the city life. It's hard to adjust back into the city life. It's very hard, and but just to keep it short and simple, I've had to really uh, compress a lot of like, let's just say, energy medicine or just conscious medicine into a materialistic framework, because they just won't accept it, right? Because I guess the priest class of the Western world right now would be it's the doctors and the materialistic scientists, and you have these psychologists who, well, it's like they claim authority and domain over what's possible. So if you have like if someone is having what they see as a psychosis, right? Um, they don't know how to handle that, so they just have that little book, and then it's called the DSM or whatever. I'm sure you're aware of it, and then it's. Whereas for me, when I was traveling, I was meeting these people who they could see into the other side, right? And it was really beautiful for me to watch and just to have that open mind. But there's a lot of people struggling here in the West because they don't have a community or people they can talk to about these things, and I guess that's definitely the role that I'm playing right now. And
Well, it's an important role
right.
because I receive a lot of emails or uh, messages, I guess you could say,
Mm.
and it's people from all all departments, the labor professionals, psychotherapists, doctors, and you know, people with a lot of money, people with no money. It's just humans in general have a lot of questions about how to change the situation
Mm.
that they've been living. Like you say, they feel something's missing. They're not happy. They might have been in a corporation, they might have been in the military, they might have been in an academic situation, they might have been in the medical field, but something just wasn't clicking for them. And a lot of them have started moving towards what they call alternate, natural ways.
Mm.
And so now there's a whole movement of people that are kind of leaving the matrix, as you call it, and going into this new way of understanding. And you serve as, the role that you're playing serves as a conduit for people that are in the professional world or the corporate world or some like this. Or they could even be musicians and artists, that are working for corporations,
Yeah, for
working for
sure.
some pharmaceutical company and advertising department, and they have like brilliant capacity for art but they just don't know how to get out of there into a more liberated, more, natural setting.
Mm.
So that's good because this is what they need. They need somebody to help them guide them out of there. And one thing that came to my mind when you were saying this, I go to a lot of ceremonies. I've been to thousands of ceremonies
Mm.
over the years. You know, like so many ceremonies. I could name different types of ceremonies. You're probably aware of a lot of them, but most of them harness the natural elements.
Right.
Whether you're
Right.
praying to the sun or using the vapor, or sweat lodge, or eating plants, they're all involved with natural things.
Mm.
Sometimes people come in there, professional people, lawyers, and they try to bring their reality into the ceremony,
Mm.
and they struggle. You can see them, they're struggling because in their mind, they're trying to see how they can use the energy of the ceremony to better their situation
Mm.
in their
Yeah.
reality. And what I tell them is if you want to practice something, what you do in the ceremonies, what you feel, how you say it, everything about the ceremonies, take that into the other reality. Don't bring that reality in here
Right.
because
Right,
it's
for
not going to
sure.
work.
No, I totally get it. I totally get it. And yeah, I've been to a lot of circles as well, and there's always and I'm guilty myself. I'm also guilty myself of and I'm always watching when I'm bringing this type of, let's just say, left brain analytical thinking, if I'm bringing it too much into like a sacred space, uh, because I have to use it because I'm using my memory and my knowledge to function, I guess, in just the world. But you're right, in a sacred space, it's different. And it's funny you said that, because some people, they're so conditioned, and um, I guess maybe evil isn't right. It's not really the right word. It's more of ignorant. Maybe that's a better word. It's
Programming.
yeah, we're programming or something, right? And they just want to come in, and they have, some of them have really good intentions, to be honest. But then the thing is, like, energy doesn't lie. That's the problem. Right? So like, you can talk all this spiritual stuff, but then when you're sitting with someone, or you're you're sitting in a space where people know it. I think you said it so well in your other podcast or interview. It's like a truth serum, right? It's
Well,
like when you
you can have the fire, and we have the fire in the middle of our ceremony,
right.
and there's a reason, because you could contaminate the water. You could make the water a different color and tell, look, this is what, or pollute the water somehow, put
Mhm.
something in it. The same thing with the air, or even the earth. But the fire, you can't really contaminate.
Right, right.
The fire is always what it is, transmuting energy in its purity.
That's
What are you
true.
going to do to the fire to make
Yeah, it's just like,
it?
oh, it's funny you said that, because actually, one of the reasons why I'm very careful, and there's a lot of people on YouTube, and a lot of people there are. Um, it's a good and bad thing. I think you said it last time on your podcast too. There is a lot of information, but there's also a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of uh, great teachers and healers, but then there's also people who are like, they just either they they just don't have the knowledge or the skill set, and it's kind of this, they're just not there, let's just say that. And um yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Just I guess what I'm trying to say, for a lot of people, they have a lot of good intentions, and a lot of people are looking for authentic people to help them guide themselves, like you said, there's certain answers that they're looking for. And I guess part of my I guess soul journey is, I just want to make sure that when people have an honest intention, that they get the help they need. Whereas, like, because when I was going through my process as well, maybe it was a blessing too, I didn't have a mentor, or I didn't have a guide, because I had to learn through trial and error. So it's like, you meet all these crazy, I mean, it's, I put myself in spots where I would volunteer all of my energy, and then I realized the person I was working with was just siphoning it, right? And I never, it was like, oh man, like, why is this happening to me? Like, but whatever. But it was a great lesson that I learned, and there was lots of lessons with the pain teacher, and yeah, I did meet a lot of good friends along the way, and a lot of similar teachers like yourself along the way, that really gave me hope, and it really gave me the persistence to just really listen to my own birth vision. And because I think that's really lacking, especially in Western culture. um, and like you were saying in some of your podcasts, in terms of the native people, I had a similar experience, because I think I told you before we spoke, when your, I guess, sense of identity is taken away, you lose a sense of self-respect and dignity, right? Then you have to try to adjust to this world that really is interested in cultivating the earth or giving back to earth. But um, I think for myself, I made peace with it, and I'm really more focused on just. Before I was like, oh man, like there's this whole all. What do you do with all these crazy things that are happening in the world? And I think you said it too in your previous recording. You were like a idealist, and you're searching for a utopia, right? Because I was the same way. Like maybe 15 years ago, I was searching for that utopia. It was like if they only did this, if they only did that, like I'm gonna find a way to like save the world, right? And then I think what's really helped me in the last like 10 years was just to get out of the way and just really start listening and start giving back, start gifting people. And yeah, just let me know.
Yeah, this is
Sometimes I tend to ramble, so just
no,
take
no,
the
it's
floor
good.
anytime you want.
I see I see where you're going with this, and I think that there is certain practices that people acquire that help them increase their energy
Mm,
in areas that allows them to assist people in rebalancing themselves. And a lot of this is personal experience that you go through in order to develop your own self. But then
mm,
there's other things that you can kind of just um, use your intelligence and your ability to observe things to kind of just come up with. There was a man who had the ability to go into people's like auras and like remove trauma,
mm,
previous trauma, things like abuse or depressions, things like this. I observed him one time doing his work. I think when you're there, like your mind doesn't really understand what's going on,
mm.
but like you say, your spirit, whatever else, your subconscious, however you understand this other part of you, if you can be aware there's another part of you that's learning besides in this reality, what the words that we're speaking,
Mm,
it learned it by being there and observing this man doing his work,
mm.
you know. And this is the kind of like transference of intelligence on another level is what we're talking about.
Right.
And lots of times the I can say the structure of ceremonies doesn't allow this to happen.
Mm,
And other times the structure does. So then you see how the structure of things can either be opening or it can be limiting. And it's like when you have a child, you're going to construct his area so that the child has the ability to develop their free will. Like, do they want to play with the Legos or do they want to paint or do they want to go outside and play in the sand? But they have to have like a free space in order that they can direct their own interests.
mm,
And humans, the what they try to do is they even when you're a child, they want you to do this, and then they put you on a routine and a schedule. And this is valued over spontaneity. If there's a full moon out, then maybe the kid should be awake so he can see the full moon. Just because it's 9 o'clock don't mean they need to go to sleep. There's some value in seeing the full moon.
right. Right. For
you
sure.
know and this is what a lot of people don't understand is that nature and the earth and its movement is very important for your own individual and for society to embrace as a guide as to what we should be doing
Mm,
as caretakers of a planet.
right.
And they're missing a very big picture, because they're isolating, they're concentrating on a material world that they've created that is not only unsustainable but very destructive.
Mm,
So what happens when you live in a society like this, you're affected and you start getting negative and destructive tendencies. And so that's why we say you need to be in a space, you need to create a space where you're able to function at a different frequency so that then you can be in communication. And this I learned from a man who never went to school, a Lakota man, because his grandfather didn't let him go to the Christian schools, and he never learned how to read and he never learned how to write. And everything that he acquired in terms of knowledge came from direct experience in ceremonies, from the Lakota tradition, the languages, and he could speak many native languages.
Wow.
Many which have no writing; they're just spoken languages.
Right.
I mean, of course, they try to do it phonetically, but he was in another realm. His mind was in another realm that allowed him to communicate with other energies. And they made a statue of him one time because he made it rain. There was a drought, and like I think the state of one of those states and around there, Ohio, Kentucky, somewhere. And they hired him, and he went over there and he prayed, and it rained.
It's amazing.
And they made it. And they made a statue of him because when you're caught in this reality, you lose certain powers.
Mm.
The power to interact with natural forces at their maximum strength. And the ancients could do this, and this is why we're talking about the civilizations that they created,
Right.
are a good example of another human reality. So we need to focus on other human realities. And remember that people exist in many different human realities. And it talks about natural people and how they view things like sex, what they call sex, this word, and a lot of psychotherapists, they read about, the founding fathers of psychotherapy, and they use these, like you say, analytical methods to try to help people, when the real problem is that the people are not living in a natural setting,
Right.
because they're not even their normal body functions are no longer even respected by the societies, because they're not in the interest of the societies.
Yeah, I just wanted to share because something came up, and I can really speak to that, like from direct experience. Uh, when I was younger, I was struggling a lot and had a lot of questions, and I ended up having a gambling experience, and not gambling experience, a gambling addiction. Well, same thing, I guess, but I had a gambling addiction, and at the time, I went to go see a counselor, and I just couldn't relate to them because they were speaking from I guess they're speaking from an ivory tower. They're speaking from a place where it was so disconnected from my own culture that there was no way that he could help me. I went to the sessions, right? I went there and I really tried to feel it out. But every time I went home, I just came home depressed and just was going like, I don't even know this guy's telling me to have this, like he's giving me like these lists, right? Personality, it's very, these like measured tools, and it's supposed to fix my mind this way. And I remember one day I just was just lying down in my bed, and I was just like, is this really it? I can't keep living like this. And I guess spirit heard me, and a miracle happened, and then I just shifted overnight. I don't know what happened. And I just never uh, gambled ever again. Well, to that extent, like it wasn't an issue anymore. And I don't have to go into all the details because I feel like it'll just uh, segue from the conversation. But what really helped me along the way was what you were saying, just going back to nature and being very natural. And the first thing I did the first day, you know what I did? I listened to my soul or my body. I went to the marketplace. I still remember to this day. I bought blueberries, tomatoes, and almonds. And I said, I can't control anything in my life right now. So I can only control one thing, what I put in my mouth, because I don't have anyone who can guide me. I don't have anyone from my culture that can help me. I'm in this city that's very Western, and I can't get the help I need. So that's what I ended up doing. So I don't know. I just wanted to share that because you're so right. Um, and I'm not saying that's going to be the truth or my story is going to be the same for everyone, but yeah, I just wanted to say what you said there it really rings true to me anyway. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, because I had a similar experience talking about that. Since
Mm,
we kind of opened up this sharing how we overcome these addictions. I mean, I quit drinking from one day to the other.
mm.
Smoking too. I quit smoking cigarettes, pot, and drinking alcohol from one day to the other. And then
Wow.
I didn't do those for 20 years.
Mm,
And then afterwards, I just decided I had taken a big enough break, and then I started smoking, drinking, and again, but
mm.
at a different understanding. I was already over 50 and I had already understood how that had been a detriment to some of the things I was trying to develop in my life. But now, being over 50, I already had accomplished a lot of those things.
Right.
So then I had another space, then now I could enjoy, cognac or eat some edibles or
Mm,
whatever, and it wasn't going to alter my progress in some of the areas. So when I started running ceremonies, for example, when I started running peyote ceremonies, I saw how alcohol was contradictory to that. So I
mm.
just stopped drinking so that I could really focus on my energy on holding space, and being present and physically present. You know, it was just the natural thing to do.
Yeah, I totally
And
get it. Yeah.
you know, like I don't have I mean, I have a laptop, but usually I don't use it. I'm
Right.
I'm not I'm not so connected, and a lot of people say that maybe I should step up into the modern world and do more things like that. But I have a little son, and every time I open the computer, it seems like I'm taking attention away from him.
Right.
So okay, so I could say, okay, well, I could use it when he's asleep, but that's the time I like to play my guitar.
Mm,
So if I'm looking at a computer, I'm not playing my music. So I'd rather play music,
mm.
or go for a walk. I like to hike a lot. So if I'm sitting in front of the computer, I'm not hiking or swimming in the waterfalls here. So it's like a choice. I could either keep up with the computer world or I can just stay in more into the natural world. And at my point in my life, I don't really need the computer. So little by little, I usually give them away either to my kids or my grandkids or some friend that needs a computer.
I feel like it's a double-edged sword. It's just I'm just speaking as someone from I guess the millennial generation. It's useful because you're learning from the senses, so you're picking up all. It's like book learning but faster. But it doesn't necessarily mean that like you were saying, you're developing a relationship uh, with I guess the elements, like you were saying, because like how many like there's so many people I talk to, like they always think they know everything. Like it's just it doesn't matter what dimension of life or what dimension. It's like I read like 1,000 books on psychedelics and chemistry and all this stuff, but their behavior and the way they behave is very damaging to themselves and other people. Like there isn't a natural alignment in the way they treat people, right? And so I just found that strange how like it can be a mind virus too. If sometimes I feel like some of the kids that I talk to, they're suffering faster because there's so much information now, right? I mean, I talk to kids who are like 12, 13 years old asking about like, is there such thing as a Illuminati and stuff like that? I'm like, hold on a second, man. Like, they're asking me about like plant medicines and have you done this? And I'm like, I'm not an expert, but, and one of my, it's not necessarily a fear. It's more of, I like to wait for an opening because before I would just like, try to truth serum the guy. It's like give him all the knowledge right away. But now it's more of like, is this person ready to be broken open? Because like you were saying before, let's just say the awakening process isn't a pretty picture. It's not just like love and light and everything's going to be good. It's I think one of the reasons why I'm hesitant at times to, let's say, unplug someone and just really be gentle is because once you break a belief system, they're going to latch on to something and they may latch on to you. And anyway, that's been my experience anyway with a lot of young people. And a lot of them are lost. They're looking for meaning. And it's just not like immigrants or people of color, even just just North Americans in general. They can feel there's a problem. It's like the energy, there's a conscious shift that's happening. And
the world is full of people that are standing up.
right.
And I travel around the world, and yeah, most countries have a core of people that are like active in some form, whether they're demonstrations or trying to organize events, artistic events or something. But they're trying to get people's attention towards certain issues that are pretty evident in the planet.
Right.
And it's a growing number. And yeah, it's I think a lot of this um, the pandemic that was implemented up on the whole planet was a response by the governments to try to inhibit the development of this resistance movement to the plans that they have.
Mm.
And we were speaking earlier. I mean, if we're going to talk about things that people want is good for information for them, like yeah, we'd have to go back talking about the soil and the water and the air
Mm.
and the taking care of the basic necessities of humans. Humans
Right.
need a lot of things that they're not receiving. So we can kind of keep that in a perspective. At the same time, I think everyone, like you say, when they come for some type of therapy or something, are trying to figure out how their own life can further this planetary movement. How they could arrange their own personal situation so that they could contribute to the positive transformation towards, you know, um, and into the destruction and how could you say the transmutation of technology and commerce and all the other major things that are affecting the planet
Mm.
into something that is going to be the benefit of all human beings. And so then on an individual level, sometimes I think it is important for the reconnecting the disintegration of your personality, of your belief system, and of your, present priorities and values. Like a lot of that has to go out the window
Right.
in order for you to integrate into a really global movement. And one of the things I will tell you personally is that whatever you are thinking at, like, okay, if you're thinking at a global level, the doors for you are going to open up to function at a global level.
Mm.
When I had a perspective of just, let's say, my community or my family, or just helping a small number, then this was my area of influence.
Right.
Once I developed this more larger understanding of all human beings, irrespective of their religion or where they live, can be part of this human awakening, the doors open for me to travel around the planet and bring this message.
Mm.
You know, and I understand this completely. I don't like take these things like it's my own personal accomplishment, or that and this is what we call understanding your purpose in life.
Mm.
And so the purpose in life has to have uh, good for yourself, good for others, good for the earth, primarily. And then it could be anything what you're doing, but if it has these qualities, then you're going to receive the goodness you need, whatever it is, material or energetic, in order to fulfill your purpose. And so this is how I understand what's happened to me, is that I have a purpose, and all I'm trying to do is just stay in the flow of receiving energy and transmitting it, whether it's in the form of thoughts, words, or in the form of deeds. Doing things, singing the songs, doing the dances, you know, doing the ceremonies, things that have cultural significance for myself, and I can share them with other people just as they've shared their cultural and traditions with me and my friends.
Mm.
It's like feathers, like some people say, how do you feel about other people wearing headdresses and using feathers? Like I like to use feathers a lot. This is a nice eagle fan, I
Mm.
usually, like, before I speak, I like to, get the energy of the feathers, the eagles, or like this.
Mm.
They say, how do you feel about other people doing that? Do you feel like it's some kind of cultural appropriation? And I
Mm.
go, no, because I also use other methods. Like you spoke of the Chinese, I do qigong and understand, the pressure points, and I call it cultural appreciation
Mm.
instead of cultural appropriation. So if someone feels the energy of the feathers and wants to use them, then I don't have a problem with that.
Right. Right.
Because some people think that they can own, or they can copyright, or they can somehow possess things,
Right.
and they become attached to them.
Mm.
And it's the same when you become attached to certain qualities of your personality. And so the best way to not get attached is to understand that you have no possessions, and everything comes from nature. Like I never say, like, these are my eagle feathers.
Right.
Like I wouldn't say that.
Oh, for
you know
sure.
it's the same with things. Like some people go, oh, that's That's my child. But right there, you're already projecting your interpretation that you could actually possess another human being, whether it's your child or not. Just and people will say, no, this just means that I love them. And no, you're saying he's your child. You have to understand your language,
Right.
because in many native cultures, they really didn't call them like this. There was a different relationship, let's
Mm,
say like this.
mm.
And it's just like my wife, my husband, my house, my career, and the cult of the individual becomes so big, it's hard for them to crack it, like you say. And
Oh
they
yeah.
become dependent on it. They really become dependent on it in all the little aspects of their personality and their way of doing things. Might not be the healthiest way.
Yeah,
So yeah.
for sure.
Mm,
You said so much there, and I see it all the time. I see those aspects in myself as well, right? Just because it's part of it's there too, and just seeing where uh, I've I'm in a space where I'm really also I'm I'm witnessing when that's happening as well, because when you're in the city life, there's so much programming. It's just if you haven't had, like you said, if you don't bring the mountain to the marketplace or the ceremony to the city, it's very difficult because you don't have a perspective that's beyond what I guess the general consensus is telling you. And yeah, and you know what's funny? A lot of us, especially in the West, we idolize people with pathologies, and sometimes these great athletes or these rich people, they're really just doing a lot of these things because they're insecure or they want some type of safe love, right? It's just it's really, but they're projecting something outside, and it's like, hey, look at me, here's my ladder, I'm going to climb it to the top, just look at me, look at me, I have all the money in the world. And but then the problem when you have all the money in the world, it's people are gonna just want to be with you because of the money. It's like a double-edged sword. Right? There's no like real relationships there. And um I was blessed to actually see that, actually. Just I won't get into the story too much because it's too personal, but um I was able to that manifested into my life where I was able to see that directly with someone that I knew, where I could see directly that having millions of dollars is, well, it still leaves you empty inside. So it was very clear when I was with the person. But I think, yeah, there's, like you're saying, there's a lot of healing to be done, and a lot of I guess you're talking about shifting of values. And I know for me anyway, the only you get to a point where uh, it's as if, like, I don't know what if you have anything to say, but the way I'm seeing humanity right now to some degree is it doesn't have to be like this. It's just extremes. It's like you have to choose between the organics or the technology, like to some degree. It's like some people we're building all this technology and we're using this type of materialist mentality to go to the moon, but we're destroying everything around us. We're building all these technologies that are poisoning everything, right? So, um, honestly, I'm just one person, so I don't have all the answers. But it's nice meeting with people and speaking to people like you who have a sense of, I guess, community and stewardship, right? So, because I'm also a young person and I'm just as concerned as anyone. And I think the reason why I wanted to really have these types of conversations was I just wanted to. Sometimes I found a lot of the material online, it was too elevated, So it wouldn't really reflect to the standard, to the normal working person. It was just too far away, right? It was just, how is this going to help me and my family? We're struggling right now. Like, how is this going to help me with my health? I have cancer, I have diabetes, I'm gonna lose my leg. How do I get healthy? Like, and then I remember when I was traveling, some people, they would, um, I guess, learn about, let's just say, the esoteric history of the planet, and other, let's say, secrets of the planet. Let's just say that. But uh, their health and wellness just, it took us, it was like a side thing, right? So there was a lot of like this fear-based mind control about everything, where it's like, oh no, there's this big, all these people have so much power, they're going to control us, they're going to destroy us. And it's like, well, you can't, there's, I think you said in your last podcast, they're underestimating the mystery. Like, there's a soul there that is there if you just center yourself and just connect. And like, it's a beautiful thing, but it's very difficult. It's, and I guess those are my concerns for the most part when I am working with people. And just really, I guess lately it's really been about coming up with really pragmatic solutions. And just lately, just to close off this kind of narrative, like, I was working with a bunch of veterans, right? And everything that I learned from my travels, it just culminated. So I was able to like put everything I learned from my travels into like a very westernized system that had a lot of like indigenous, like Filipino and Chinese type of, as well as Western science elements. It was for healing, but it just worked with these people, because I think you said it in your last interview when you're talking about ceremonies. Like, you almost had to adjust the ceremony. It's like you have to know your audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you said that last time. I think you
Mm-hmm.
expressed concerns about sometimes if the ceremony is too traditional, then you can't really build that bridge with like someone with a Christian background, Muslim background, any type of other background. The bridge just cannot be built. And I don't know how that's going to play out. And I'm glad that you said that term, cultural appreciation. I'm going to start using that too. And I'll tell them I learned it from you. I love that, because I feel like, because I do the same thing. And that's the beauty of, I guess I'm so lucky, on one hand, to have grown up in Canada. So on the one side, it was tough because I didn't have a lot of mentors and elders of my own tradition. But on the other hand, I was lucky because with Toronto and that side of life, I got to meet so many people. And I remember you said it on your last podcast, that I saw, when you did your ceremony for the first time, and it was in New York. And it was like you're saying that like all these people, like, all four colors of the earth that were there, and they were just sharing, and you were like, whoa, I'm learning more about other people and how they like,
Mm-hmm.
and all these things. So I'm lucky I learned that early, because I had friends that were Indian, I had friends that were Black, I had friends that were African, I had friends that were Spanish. And then we would do homework, I would just go to their house, and then I would eat dinner with them, and I would learn like Canadian culture, and eat their potatoes with margarine and whatever, like peas and carrots, and they would talk about their lives, and I would go to like an Indian place, eat their curries, and then I would go to Spanish place and eat chorizo and all these things, and it was beautiful. But anyway, I just, like I said, I for some reason that came up in this conversation. That's all. And I
Well,
think
I
that's
say unity through diversity.
right, right,
It
right.
makes us strong, to have the variety of cultures.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm all about cultural preservation, and so that's what I say too. Is if people are helping to keep these cultures alive. And like traditions, they need to change too, because like all things change. And if things don't
Mm.
change, they might not stay alive.
Right.
So I feel like we're creating a new human tradition that's transcending borders. Like we're actually dissolving the borders,
Mm.
because this was always one of my intentions. You talk about intentions, I'm like, man, why do we even have to have borders?
Right. I know. It's weird to me, but it is what it is, right? Yeah.
But we're actually dissolving them through the development of a planetary culture.
Mm.
I mean, like my daughter, I paid for her yoga training, and she's studying at NYU, mental health or something like this,
Mm.
uh, public health, excuse me. And so, yeah, and of course, she does native tradition
Mm.
ceremonies, or she's aware of this culture, so she's fusing a lot of different things.
Mm.
And this is what I think the beauty is. Like sometimes people ask me, do I think that, the native way is like the best way or something like this? And I never see it as that. I just feel each uh, culture has something to contribute.
Right.
I was just at a Jewish New Year festival. Was it yesterday? Day before yesterday. And they were celebrating their New Year,
Mm.
the year 5,700 and something. And the way they explained their method to give thanks and you know pray or put their intentions for the coming cycle is very beautiful.
Mm.
And I've also been in Arab countries, you know, just to follow up with that, and celebrated with people in Egypt and Libya, and it's the essence of humanity is the same.
Right.
It's just the different colors. And this is an important thing to note in these times, because the governments always use division of people to serve their own purposes, whether it's to have wars or just to have the people think that they're superior to some other country or something like this. And I think that the sharing of culture that's taking place at this moment across the planet, like, is the best solution to this fragmented, separate idea of how to organize humans on the planet, basically countries. And so, yeah, I really appreciate the movement of cultural exchange, and I feel like I'm bringing some of the native culture to the table. And it's like this: when you go to a ceremony, what do you bring to the ceremony? How are you going to sit there? Are you going to sit there and just wallow in your misery, and try to figure out your own problems? Or are you going to bring something, some good energy, some positive vision, some good songs, some good words, to help create something that's beneficial for everybody, like a
Right.
collective energy? And I see that as on a global level too.
Mm.
So I'm always encouraging people to bring something positive to the table. Choose your words carefully. You know, every time you open your mouth, you're changing the,
Mm.
what do you call, the atmosphere,
Right.
through what you're saying, through the ideas you're doing. So I tell them, say something good, say something inspiring, say something positive about what's happening in the world.
Mm.
So much so that some people can't make that transition. Like they want to focus on problems in their life and problems in the world.
Mm.
And I tell them that's really not solving it. If you want to move towards the resolution, then start speaking about the good aspects.
Mm.
Focus energy on your good aspects and on the good aspects of things that are happening. Mhm. And so this is one suggestion I can give to people if they want to better their life is be careful how you speak about yourself and how you speak about people around you in a practical sense, you know, because your words are very powerful and you're creating your own reality. And this, you can see that on Facebook a lot of times, but I can tell you it's true. These sayings, and it's very important as a parent to not project things onto your children.
Right.
You know, and try to study your child because he's in a natural form and see how they develop and learn about how humans develop. And when you have the opportunity to be a parent, try to allow your child to develop in a natural setting as much as possible. And yeah, that's the importance of not living in cities where the children are not able to go into nature, and they don't need to see a butterfly on a computer screen, or see a caterpillar turn into a butterfly on a computer screen in some time lapse video. They can actually go outside in their garden and find a butterfly and then watch them, lay their eggs and actually witness it in real and I guess you would call this real. I don't know, but I'm almost afraid to say the real world because it would sound
No, no, I totally get it. Like honestly, I grew up in an age where I was like a video gamer, so I totally understand. It's like I lost myself in that world. I had to come back and just come back to the ground, and it's made such a huge difference. But I know what you mean. I definitely know what you mean.
so this is the balance, like okay, I think what you're doing, and I was happy to participate in your program because there is good ways to use technology, and technology is good if used properly, as long as it doesn't contaminate
Mm.
or create destruction. And yeah, I'm all for computers. I bought computers for all my kids. They're using them. Myself, I don't use them too often, but like I said, it's my choice.
Mm.
You know, People wanted to do Zoom ceremonies, during the pandemic.
Right, the Zoom
Send
ceremony.
peyote, yeah, send peyote to everybody, and put a fire on one screen, but I think people could function in this reality. Like
Mm,
they're willing to do this. This is an acceptable reality for them.
mm,
And I find that interesting. I'm not opposed to it. I just think it's an interesting phenomenon. That people are are able to get into this space. And myself, I believe that there is benefits from creating uh, ma- machines that can think for you.
right.
But when they're used to automatically scan a human, oh, we're back.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think you're
Okay,
saying automatically scan a human.
yeah, they can scan a human and then determine whether to take that human's life or not.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Now we're getting machines that can take life. We're getting artificial intelligence that has authority to take a human life.
Mm,
And see, this is where you're going over into an area where not only is technology being used incorrectly, what you're setting a precedent, and this is what I think people need to be constantly aware of, that the computers and the technology does not supersede nature and human existence.
Right.
Otherwise we're going to get into this. It's not good. It's not a good situation, you know. And that's one of the things I like about um, ceremonies where you have to, like, everybody turns their phones off and everybody unplugs. And I see when it takes a minute for people, like some people just want, like, I said, what are you doing over there? They're like FaceTiming, I'm at a ceremony, I'm eating
You
peyote,
gotta get that
I,
Instagram stuff, man.
you know what I mean? Hashtag peyote.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Hashtag peyote. Yeah, I'm gonna use that too. That's too
I'm like,
funny.
you need to unplug. You need to be able to really put everything down and get out of it so that you can open up other realities. And this is what when the conversation was, is that you can develop abilities to go into your past lives, you can go into your future lives, you can go into, the galaxy exists. You don't need a rocket ship to go to the moon. You
Mm,
know, you can actually. I was practicing with my son. There's a pile of sand, and I was pretending we were at the beach.
mm,
You know, like we were in a little beach. And you can actually create a a reality, and the kids, they get into it. For
mm.
them, okay, we're at the beach.
Yeah, for sure.
But for a human, it's hard. It's like, no, no, this is not the beach. This is a pile of sand, and those toys are just toys that you use at the beach, because they can't accept that the mind is powerful enough to create something. When I was in the Egyptian pyramid, I don't usually say this on the internet and stuff because sometimes people don't really understand. But I actually met some human form of intelligence from another dimension that appeared to me in the middle of the pyramid.
Mm,
And I talked to some people about it, and there's different ideas of who it could have been. Some people think
mm.
it was Thoth. Some other people think it was a female
Right.
spirit. It was like a blue spirit.
Mm,
And I really couldn't determine the gender. I couldn't. All I know is that when it went like this and kind of touched foreheads like this,
mm.
asked me if I could leave this reality. Basically, what the question, the mental telepathic question was, can you leave this reality? And I said yes. And then that's when I received like an energetic experience,
Mm,
which I would describe kind of like going into another dimension
mm.
where the physical constraints and laws of physics of this reality do not apply. Because I had climbed to the top of the pyramid a few months earlier, and the question was posed to me as I was meditating on the top of the point of the pyramid, as if I would like to meet the people who constructed these pyramids. And I replied affirmative. I said, yeah, I would like to meet them. So a few months later, I found myself inside the big pyramid, meditating kind of like this on the whole structure.
Mm.
And this being appeared to me. So either there was a real being, a light being that appeared to me, or my mind created the whole situation.
Right.
So was it real or was it not real?
Mm. No, for sure. I think I'd be in the same boat you are. Is like how, for sure.
So I take it as alternative realities that can be as real or sometimes even more real
Mm.
than these realities that we call. So this is what they call reality check in my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to realize that your reality has been created for you.
Mm.
And how you function in that reality, a lot of it is determined on the amount of information you have
Mm.
on how things are structured and how things operate. And so, like when you get into the ceremonial ways, the first thing they tell you is these ceremonies are all based on the elements. So you have to learn how to communicate with the elements and harness the energy of the elements.
Right.
So yeah, like if someone needs their aura clean, you stand up by the fire and you ask the fire to clean
Mm.
it. And so the person opens up to this potential cleansing of trauma. You need to tell them, look, with your breath, you're going to breathe the energy of the fire in. So you kind of paint the mental picture for them so that they allow this to happen.
Right.
And this is like creating a reality. But if you ask a person what they felt, they'll say, yeah, I felt like the fire came and cleaned my aura and got rid of the bad karma or the bad spells or whatever they had that was negatively affecting their health.
Mm.
So I'm happy, like when I go to the doctor, they check my vision, they check my blood pressure, they check my urine, they check my pulse and everything. Like the last time I went, my heartbeat was 44 beats a minute. And that's like a really strong heart, you know. And like I said, I have good vision. I don't have cholesterol. I don't have diabetes. And I contribute that a lot to my happy state. I have a mantra, and I'll share this with people. I say, life is good, life is easy. I'm strong, I'm healthy, and I'm happy.
Mm.
You know? And I'm convincing myself. I'm creating my reality. You know, I say, I'm not getting, uh, I'm not declining in my health. I'm maintaining. My health is actually getting better as I'm
Mm.
getting older.
Mm.
You know, I don't buy into this other reality that says as you get older, you're going to get less healthy.
Mm.
This is just something that the medical profession has created so that people will become patients as they get older
For sure.
and
And
start being addicted to pharmaceuticals, you know, for your blood pressure, for this, for that, you know.
mm.
So yeah, you have to be aware. You have to really, it's all about being aware. You know, this is the main thing. Become more aware of everything all the time.
You know what? I think what you said there was really key. Um, become more aware. It's because sometimes, let's say, newcomers or people who are going to ceremony for the first time, or let's just say if you're dissolving or entering into these transcendent states for the first time, it's very difficult to uh, bring that awareness into your way of being. And yeah, and I think that's very valuable what you just said there. And it takes practice, and like you're saying, you're talking about, making sure you get those affirmations in. Your every thought, word, and deed is balanced. And I feel like, just reading about all this stuff, and also just learning just by experience, like I feel like it's a lesson for me too. Like I have to keep doing this too. And it's not just like, just because you've been around the block, you still have to, uh, it's like you're maintaining a sense of integrity. And I always check myself too. It's like, yeah, like, like, why are you so down? right? So I like to have friends who can really look at my blind spots. So when I know when my, I guess when my ego, or I guess when my toxic or dark side is just too dark right now, so it's like, it's just like, I'm really just, because when there's so much pain in the world, sometimes you feel that pain, especially when you're first starting off on, let's say, that journey to that global intention, like you were saying. And so, like, because you have to be careful, right? Like, if you want to have this global intention, well, at the same time, you're going to feel the global pain, or the pain of the world as well. And people forget that. And but yeah, I could definitely, I really resonate with everything you said there. And it's just really, it's funny how especially in the spiritual scene, or in, be it the esoteric scene or the occult scene or the new age scene, or whatever spiritual scene, there's a lot of reading, and there's a lot of philosophy, and there's a lot of, and I'm good at that kind of stuff, right? And that's fine. But it's, if it's not like embodied wisdom, like, or stuff like, you're sharing your story with the pyramid and having an energetic experience, what can you really say? So it's like you're trying to show color to a blind man or something. It's very difficult to explain to some people. But because I've had similar, like, experiences too, like, when you go out of body, or you enter into the dream world, and you start creating these realities, and you start doing these reality checks to see if you're there. And I guess that's where I started, to be honest, because it was something where I could do at home. um they had a lot of resources for Western people. And it's not that, yeah, I don't really recommend books or my tools too often, because I'm a believer that the mystery will give you the tools. Like, it's a unique tool for you. So even if I tell someone, read this book or do this system, if it doesn't resonate with their storyboard or their birth vision, then probably not gonna. It's just, you can plaster all these, like, cars on your wall and houses, but you're not gonna manifest that, because it's not part of your destiny, man. It's like, I keep laughing at these, like, manifestation courses. You're like, okay, do this, do that. I'm like, dude, it's not part of your birth vision. Like, it's not. Maybe you're a healer. Maybe you're an artist, like you were saying in the other podcast. Maybe you're here to be like your daughter, a public health. You're here to organize communities, right? Maybe like just women's natural power to really get things done and organize communities, or maybe elder men just like yourself, where I feel like, because we're missing that as well in the Western world. We don't have these rites of initiation anymore. It's been lost. And I know for myself, we have these pseudo rituals, right? So we graduate, you get your stamp of approval. It's like, you graduated, the gavel's on your head, like, good job, you've been programmed, So it's just like, but there's no, and I've been part of fraternities and brotherhoods and stuff like that, but it wasn't really, I guess, the essence of what it meant to be a human and go through that initiatory process and find your birth vision and your meaning. I guess there was no vision quest. Let's just put it like that. There was no vision quest, and I feel like what you're doing too is, a lot of friends I know as well, just to make it very applicable. It's their first time. Like, they always ask me, because I'm not an expert. I haven't done that many ceremonies in terms of the native tradition, but they're always asking me questions, and it's like, that's not my lineage, but at least I can point you in the right direction. Like, I know, like, the heartfelt basics of it, right? They ask me questions. How do I prepare? How do I navigate that space? Like, it's the same questions. How do I integrate this into my life? Right? And how do I be like you were saying before, how do I create more goodness for myself, for my family, for my community, and for other people, or for the global village? And I think that's what you're doing, and what other healers are doing, or let's say Earth allies of humanity. Let's just say that. It sounds like it's funny there, but I think it's important, and it's sometimes I'd say people need to hear your voice too. Like they need to keep, and I think that's the value of technology. Like you're saying, people can hear your stories, and they can also hear your struggles. Because I'm sure you weren't, definitely there's stuff that for me too. I'm not gonna tell my entire storyline, all the pain and the suffering. It's just like because I want to bring something good to the ceremony too. Like using those dark nights of the soul, and you get so you compassionate for your fellow human being because you know how hard it was. It's just like like this sometimes like when you're bringing the sacred into the mundane, uh, sometimes it helps a lot. I remember the first time I did ceremony with ayahuasca, and must have been like 10 years ago, and that really helped me. Like it really helped ground my essence, um, and for the first time, I was able to see because I had such an intellectual understanding, and that's why I tell people about just maybe plant medicines or whatever modality you're using that will embody that wisdom. Is that I remember, I just clearly remember it was like a insight that I had when I first returned to the city, and this lady was yelling at me, right? She was like, "Oh yeah, this is not, I didn't get my product, blah 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 blah," and my previous self would have been like, "Oh man, what's her problem? Like, why? I'm just doing my job, right?" But for some reason, I was still kind of like maybe I don't know, it must have been like 3 or 4 days after that I felt I was the other person. you know, I understood her like for real, and it was nice being able to bring that sacredness into the mundane, and it's a beautiful thing. So, um, anyway, that's I just wanted to share those insights for anyone watching, or if you want to share stuff too, feel free because it's really helpful. So
I call it. I have these different mantras that I run through my head, and one of them is called impeccable positivity.
right,
And yeah, some people call me the king of denial.
the king of denial. It's kind of
And I thought they were talking about the Egyptian pyramids and that. No, but they were talking about another kind of denial.
right.
Like, I know that negative talk and negative attitudes exist.
Mm,
I'm not blind or deaf, but personally, I always choose to focus on
mm,
the positive aspects of a person, the positive aspects of a situation. Like when this pandemic happened, right away I saw a lot of positive things from it.
mm,
The world stopped polluting so much.
right.
Families were having more time to spend together. People became more conscious of their health,
Mm.
of their diet. People wanted to start planting gardens. There was a lot of positive things that came out of this whole thing.
For
And
sure, yeah.
it's unfortunate, a lot of restaurants, got eliminated in the process, and some people's businesses weren't able to withstand the economics. But when weighed against the benefits that took place from this shutdown of human activity for a while,
Mm.
I think we came out pretty good, you know.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a global initiation on some degree. It's the way I like to
Yeah, I
see it
mean,
anyway.
yeah, it was a moment when everybody in the planet, it's kind of like when they had this December 12th, 2012, something like this, December 21st, 2012, where everybody in the planet was praying that the world didn't end, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I remember that clearly. I still remember. I remember those days for sure.
And so it's like this. It got the whole planet kind of praying or thinking or somehow wishing that this virus doesn't kill everybody, you know? So it's like we're all thinking the same thing. And this is a powerful moment.
Mm,
And I think that this positive sentiment, you know, that all humanity kind of wishing and hoping that something good happens was a powerful force.
mm,
And I think it's going to have good results.
right.
It may even counteract a lot of these things that that the system is trying to, the corporate system is
Mm,
trying to impose upon us.
mm,
So, like, I see that as something positive, and yeah, like this in general, when things happen in my life, it may appear to be an unfortunate event or even an unfortunate series of events,
mm,
but life has showed me that it's not always the case, that sometimes this is exactly what I needed in order for my personal development, you know.
for sure.
And so I take it like that. I don't trust people too much, but I do trust the universe and what's happening in my life. I kind of feel like, okay, this is happening for a reason,
Mm,
you know.
for sure. For
And
sure.
yeah, and I look at it in a positive attitude. I think this is what spirituality is. If you cut it down to the basics, it's just having a positive attitude about things,
Mm,
because the spirit is greater than the inconveniences that you're suffering.
right.
And so if you know that there's a higher, bigger, more powerful, energetic life force, then you can kind of minimize your own personal suffering. Like, you lose your self-importance, like, okay, so it's
Mm,
not so important what's happening to me, and you can expand your feelings.
mm,
I'll be honest with you. I don't When I go to ceremonies, I'm not really trying to work on myself or work on other people. I
mm.
try to create an environment where people are having a good time,
Right, right. Oh,
an
you know,
intensely good time. Yeah, like this. Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to say something. It just really came up to me. It's just I had a mentor of mine. He said the exact same thing, right? And what came about it was you know because it was just a shift for me as well, working in like in the holistic industry, and it's it's more of a how do you, or it's like how do you allow, or how do you create the how do you allow healing to arise instead of trying to cure something? It's a totally different paradigm shift, right? It's not like a mechanism of action and you do this, you do that, right? And I just love how you said that, because it is so simply put. It's like uh, you're creating the conditions for healing and to arise in that space. It's because it's sacred.
Yeah, a lot of transformation takes place,
Mm,
and it's a combination of things too. So I think that if you put certain factors into your life, certain practices, um, you're going to bring about this dynamic, this powerful dynamic energy.
mm,
You're going to create it,
mm,
and then you know how to use it. You don't waste it, and you start getting better at it, and then eventually it'll have effect on you and the people around you too. Things will start getting, I guess you could say, more in tune, more aligned.
Mm. Well, I feel like speaking of alignment, I feel like this conversation's closing. I just felt it. Um,
Hmm.
and I guess lastly, do you have any words of encouragement for people who are, I guess, in a space where they've lost a sense of meaning and I guess they're not in a happy place?
You know, I think we all go there at some point,
Mm.
and it's okay to feel that emotion of despair or hopelessness, but don't stay there. You know, that's what I can tell you. You know, it's okay to visit there if you want to know what it feels like, but it's much easier to live a happy life. It takes less energy, and you're going to enjoy it more, and you're going to be healthier. So, yeah, just choose to be happy. I wake up in the morning, I'm in a good mood, and I stay in a good mood. I don't let people take me out of my center, project things on me. And then when I go to sleep in a good mood. And this is kind of just the easy way to do things.
So true. And I guess lastly, just to close it off, it's well, first of all, I really appreciate you just connecting with me, and yeah, even right now I just feel so opened, and I feel like it's this conversation was very healing for me as well. So again, thank you just for sharing your space and just having a talk with me. I really appreciate it, and just also just to help other people find you or just promote your work as well. Where can people find you? And do you still travel? Well, obviously you do. You're still traveling around doing ceremonies, but how can people find you or connect with you?
Well, my son set up a website for me,
Mm,
and it's simply Kuauhtli.com.
okay.
And my contact information is there. And also, I just want to say one more thing that came to my mind is that sometimes life is good, and then sometimes it's better.
Mm.
And remember, when you thought it couldn't get better, it usually does, as long as you're open to receive.
Yeah, that's so true. The open to receive. That's definitely. I feel like that's the mantra of this conversation, for sure. Open to receive, because it's like because I feel like with this conversation, there's a lot of gift giving and gift sharing, and like there's less ownership per se, like you're saying. But yeah, I would just personally, I would just love to one day just sit with you one day and just learn from you or just share space. And yeah, just I'm honored again to have you on. And again, I'll post this on my video channel, and then we'll just go from there.
Sure.
Okay.
And I guess if anybody's listening to this and they want to, feel free to contact me, and we can continue a discussion on any point that they thought was interesting. And I must say one last thing in closing, that I do always reserve the right to contradict anything I said in any podcast.
For sure, for
If
sure.
if I am enlightened to some other information that contradicts what I said.
Of course, of course, of course, of course, of course. And yeah, and for me too, I actually I had a friend ask this question. It's like, when do you come to Calgary? I just have to put it out there because she was asking like so if you're watching this, you know who you are. I put it out there, okay? Okay, so all right. So thanks again. I appreciate it.
All right. All right, my brother.